Universitas Semarang. Thank you very much once again. Previously, Prof. Usman is the affiliation is from Taipei Medical University, and right now, Prof. Usman is professor in the School of Population Health in the University of New South Wales, Australia. Yeah, we hope after this quiz lecture, and it is participated by our student and also our faculty members here, and our student in the public health, undergraduate and postgraduate, master and doctoral program, and as well as our student in the nutrition program and also in the pharmacy program. I hope this collaboration, your help, Professor Usman, not just in the quiz lecture. We hope also our student, especially in the doctoral and maybe master degree, can be supervised by Prof. Usman Iqbal to improve, to refine their paper, their manuscript, like this evening, this afternoon topic, to improve, to develop the skill of writing. The topic is from idea to impact, writing for reputable international journal. We know that right now, not just produce the document, produce the paper, but also must be citable by other researcher, by other academic members. Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting and very useful topic to be understand for our student, also for our faculty members. Thank you once again, Prof. Usman Iqbal, and thank you for everyone here. Enjoy the quiz lecture, enjoy the visiting lecture, and we hope all of we can get the fruitful benefit from this meeting. I myself actually want to join this session, your lecture, but unfortunately I have another appointment, and now I must join the academic senate meeting in Universitas Semarang. So I will just not join this session until the finish. Thank you, Bu Dina, for preparing, for arrange this quiz lecture. Thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy the quiz lecture. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Mahalul Azam, for the warm welcoming speech. And before the presentation begin, may I briefly introduce to you our guest lecturer, Professor Dr. Usman Iqbal, PhD, graduated with a PhD degree in Biomedical Informatics from Taipei Medical University. And he is a young associate professor in School of Population Health, the University of New South Wales, Australia. Also visiting associate professor and digital health consultant in Global Health Department, College of Public Health, Taipei Medical University, Taiwan. Professor Usman Iqbal also got many scholarship and research publication award. He got Australian Distinguished Talent Award in 2019 and also Plum Blossom Card from Taiwan. Professor Usman Iqbal has more than 100 academic publications and associate editor of some prestigious journal. And now, please welcome our special guest, Professor Usman Iqbal. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much for the nice introduction, Dina and Professor Mel. So I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you again, Dr. Dina and Professor Malu. It's my always great pleasure to come again and speak with the students and all of you. Today we are going to talk about from idea to impact. As Professor Adam already mentioned that, the papers, not just for the sake of publication, but also have to have some impact that people can, utilize this for citation, which can impact on the community. So writing into, reputational international journals is a challenge always. For no matter even for the well-established researchers. So you already have my brief introduction. So I was in Taiwan before. I recently moved to Australia and still doing my academic activities as part of my digital health interest. Today we will be talking about different things. I divided into 5 sections. So first is the main why and how to prepare your manuscript. And section 2 is how to find a suitable journal for your manuscript, because sometimes if you prepare your draft but you don't know where to submit. And then section 3 is what things to check before you submit. That is also very important. And also section 4, how journals usually process your paper. And section 5 is why and how promotion of your paper is important. And please feel free to send in the chat your question, or you can also raise your hand, or you can stop me on the way. I like to be more interactive session and happy to explain and clear to answer your question that time. So in the section 1, we are going to talk about why and how to prepare your manuscript. There are different types of scientific writings, different kind of research papers. One is the category called regional papers, which is research articles or research papers. Then there is a review articles, which is based on the literature which is already published, and then you review that. And then there are different types of review as well. Then there are short communication, letter to editor, or commentary as well. Research projects for funding as well. You also write sometimes some papers for applying for the research grants. That's called research proposals, research projects for funding. And then there are some patents as well. In some fields, you need to write some patents if you have done something. Then there's a dissertation or thesis. Most of the postgraduate students, they have to write their thesis as well. So what is exactly the definition of a scientific paper? So scientific paper actually is a kind of a special structured kind of draft, which is written and published reports describing original results. That is like original research results, means you have done something which is unique and only you have done that. It's not like someone else has done and you are publishing that. So it could be any research question you are going to answer. So you might have some questionnaire which you collected the data and then drafting a paper. It should be written in a certain way, means you cannot just have a random written report. It has a special structure, like what should be coming first, second, third, fourth. And it also should be published in a certain way. So you cannot publish randomly in anywhere. It is published in a specialized or relevant field journals, and then meet the test of the valid publication as well. So it has to go through the right publication structure. For example, in the journals, they have the peer review system. And publish in a right place is also very important. So if you have done some work in a public health, you cannot publish into engineering or in biomedical or other. So it has to be the relevant journal. So because then the relevant audience will go through to search your paper and read and get benefit. So research papers have to be in a specific format, in a specific journals, and published in a right domain. So it's not like a newspapers or some other wherever you want to publish, you can publish. So it has to have a very specific structure. Then the next question comes is why to write. Then sometimes we think, okay, yes, we have got the degree. Why we have to write the paper? So there are several points why you want to write a paper, why you want to have your research into a publication. First of all, some people think that there is something important which they have done as part of their studies and they want to share with the people internationally. So if you have done some study in Indonesia, how people will be in Australia will know that, oh, you have done this something, or in the US or in other countries, right? So if you have done something and then you are going to publish in a journal, so maybe someone sitting in Europe want to do something similar, or they are looking for some literature. When they put in their keywords in the database like PubMed or other, they can able to pull all the papers published already in the database, right? Maybe they are interested in something specifically happened in Indonesia, right? Some specific studies, some interesting research questions. So that's how you can able to find the literature from the different countries. But imagine if you did not get chance to publish in any journals, but you have done maybe very good, wonderful research, then nobody will know what you have done unless someone is really talk to you face to face or ever have an encounter or interaction somewhere. And also it is important to advance yourself professionally. So if you have done something in the field and you want to publish because you want to advance yourself, so if you have published, people will know that, oh, this is a person who is expert in this domain. And then, of course, if you're in academics or research, you want to publish because you want to apply for the research grants because you want to do some more research. So to do more research, you want to find some evidence to convince the people who are giving you funding that this is what you have done, and that's how your research has an impact, and that's why you're applying for further grants. To educate, of course, if you publish papers online, then there are several people around the world who might be wanting to study on the same topic. So they will be looking for the literature. So they can learn a lot from the published papers as well. And they can get educated from that. Then contributing to your institution. So for example, if you're publishing from specific institution where you are affiliated, you are actually contributing to that particular institution. And also contributing to your field. And improving practice if you are doing something, to improve healthcare, maybe in a primary care settings or in the tertiary care settings, it depends. And also if you do something, it means like you are actually also having some personal satisfaction and development. So it means you can also learn from your own research as well. And you feel satisfied that you are contributing to the science. And why usually we cannot able to write? Right? So there are, of course, number of barriers. So there is a lack of time is the one main key concern where we think that, oh, we all are very busy. We cannot able to do this work. And sometimes we don't know what to write, where to write, and how to write. What is the structure, right? So we are unfamiliar with the writing. And also we don't know what is the process of publication. We don't know where we should start, where, what section should be, how long should be the paper. And we don't have specific idea on that. And also if you have already drafted something and submitted somewhere, something we have bad experiences, so we can get rejection, criticism, and we feel bad, sad, like, oh, why our paper is rejected. So I can tell you that even for the well-established researchers, they also encounter the bad experiences because you don't know how many times they submitted the paper. So it does not mean that they did not have the bad experience. So everyone who submit paper does not mean that in the first time they can get into rejection. Then what we should do is we should give a try, right? So we should plan the strategies that can help. What you can do, you maybe collaborate with some other people who are experts. So maybe if you are good in writing, maybe someone else is good in helping you with the methodology, or maybe someone is good with analyzing the data, right? So this is how you can collaborate to work together. Maybe not everyone is expert in analyzing the data or with the statistics, right? Or maybe someone is not good with the writing. So it's not really that complicated, and everyone gets rejected, but you always have to be persistent. You have to give a try again and again. So whenever you start writing, you have to answer a few questions before you start something. You have to think why you want to publish your work, right? If you're doing something, you have to think why it is important. So first of all, is it new or interesting? So because if it is something which has been already done and there's nothing new someone else is doing, then might be it's not very making a more impact on the journals or in the research itself. And also, is it current or hot topic? So this is also very important that you need to understand that if this is a timely topic, right? For example, nowadays people are talking about chat GPT, large language models. And few years back, just 1 years or 2 years back, people were talking about the COVID-19, right? So everything was revolving around that too. So you need to understand the topics as well. Have you provided solutions to some difficult problems? Because it's very easy for everyone to just say, oh, this is a problem, or this is a problem. But if you find a problem, you also need to suggest what are the solutions you're proposing, right? The research, what trying to identify the solution. Another key point is that, are you ready to publish at this point? Because if you are just thinking in your head, you don't have anything in hand, then it doesn't mean that you're already looking for the journals. First, you have to have some things in your hand. If all the answers are yes, then start preparation of your manuscript. So I think then it will make sense that you can able to do some preparation for the manuscript. A scientific article must answer the following basic questions. So whenever you are drafting a paper, you need to always keep in mind this is very clear. So think like a story. When you have a story, you start from somewhere and then you end at the conclusion, right? So you have a very good start, then you have everything is very clear. Same in the research paper as well. So it's just like more precise. So what is the problem that is addressed? So you have to keep in mind the very clear about the problem. So you cannot talk about multiple problems in one research. So you have to be very specific, narrow down, pick one. Because if you are picking multiple problems, then it will be hard for you to fix everything in one paper, because a paper has limitation. If you look into the paper, there are papers which they always journal will ask you to have the specific number of words. Let's say they will say 3,000 words, right? So if you have 3 problems, you cannot able to justify in that, right? It will be difficult for you. So always suggested to have picking one single problem. Then you also have to think why it is important, right? Because this is also very important. If you are convincing someone internationally, then you also have to keep in mind then why this problem. The problem could be in one settings. It could be in one specific region. It's not a problem, but that you are picking up the problem which is specific to region. But you have to explain that why this problem is important, right? For everyone. It could be somewhere else too. And how did you study the problem? That is also important, right? So for example, you might have done some questionnaire study. You might have some database where you pull the information from hospital or maybe from primary care, or maybe you interview some people, right? So this is very important to also explain how. And what are your results is also very important, because your results will explain exactly that what are the findings. And based on your findings, you will propose a solution that what could be the outcome, right? And so what are the implications of the results? So let's say if you find some results of the study saying that the people with this a particular region have low literacy rate, right? So maybe you want to educate them on particular disease, right? So that's why that could be the implication. So maybe you want to design the further studies or workshops or these kind of things, or online education material. Then what do you recommend as further study for others? So it's not just finished there. So for example, if someone wants to do this study in other country, maybe there are, sometimes the regions have the same issues. So what do you suggest then? Or sometimes, because if you are doing a study in particular region, you might have a limitation of the resources, right? Because of course, sometimes you don't have everything to do. Maybe you have limitation of the funding. Maybe you have less people to do. Maybe you have one setting only to do. and you cannot do in the whole country. Maybe you only can able to do in one particular region or one state, right? So you need to explain, okay, we have done in one state, but we suggest to do all in other states as well, or nationwide, or maybe other countries to see the results, right? So the questions I was talking about, if I want to see in a paper, it will look like this. So you can see here, any research paper you will pick up, it will have the introduction, method, results, and discussion. These are the four main major sections in every paper. And introduction means what is the, right? So introduction, as I mentioned, that you have to tell what is the problem, right? And then come to the main point, what is your research question? And then what did you do is the method. So what method you use, right? So maybe you have done specific way. Like I mentioned, you might have interviewed people, you might have questionnaires, you might have used some research database. So these kind of things, right? So you have to be very clear on the method. When doing the method, also keep in mind that you also have to mention very clearly about the time frame as well, like when you did study, on how much population, everything should be very clear, well captured. As I mentioned, like a story, so it should be like a story. What did you find is the results. So you have to be very clear about the results as well. And what does that mean is discussion. So after you find the results, then now what is exactly this overall findings means is, the discussion. So you have to discuss. Whenever you're discussing the findings, always find a relevant literature. So for example, some studies might be supporting your findings, and some studies might be, having a different findings than yours. So you have to find, maybe they have done in a different setting. So maybe they have used a different methodology, right? So this is all very important. So when you're structuring your manuscript, you have to keep in mind that you are actually trying to tell a story. So there is a beginning, there is a middle body, and there is an ending too. But also at the same time, keep in mind that it must be easy to read and easy to understand. Don't use very extraordinary vocabulary. Use very simple language, the plain language, because sometimes the too much technical terms or extraordinary vocabularies are hard to understand for some people too. Writing style, an article should be understood and easily by the reader. So use plain language, avoid any jargons, be precise, be active, not passive, short words, short sentences, and use always plural. Not like I have done this, or, we have done, or we did this, or stuff like that, because you have done collectively. Nothing can be done only by the one person. Very rarely, if you can say, in the research, it's a collective work. Always be gender neutral as well. Always keep in mind that there are international readers, right? So it's not just for the specific region, but it's overall for the international readers. Whenever you are using abbreviation, maybe you are familiar with abbreviation, but not everyone. So always try to explain abbreviation in the first, at least in the paper, wherever you are using that, right? So then people will understand, okay, this is abbreviation which you're trying to use in the whole term. So that's its meaning. You don't have to use in the throughout the paper again and again, but at least in the first you have to define. Cross out as many of these as you can. So remove that and make it very clear. For these are the three C's which you need to keep in mind whenever you're drafting a paper. Good writing possesses the following three C's. First, clarity. It should be very clear, concise, and correctness, the accuracy. Do not come up with the assumptions by yourself. So you have to have things with the facts. Always refer to the literature or citations. The key is to be as brief and specific as possible without omitting the important details. So the paper does not have too much like a thesis details, space. So you have to write the paper within the word limit. Try to have as much information as you can in the paper without omitting the important information from the paper as well. But you also have to keep in mind what could be the problem, right? So you need to know your enemies as well. So good writing avoids the following traps. For example, don't repeat the same thing if you have already written in the introduction or in the method and then capturing in the results, because you have to keep in mind the number of words you have in the paper, right? And don't be redundant as well. Like, have to be very clear whatever you're writing, right? Don't be ambiguous, like, oh, I don't know, or we try to find, or something like that. So very clear about whatever you want. Don't be ambiguous, and don't exaggerate the things as well, like, oh, this is a thing which can solve everything, because you never know in the world. Maybe there are some other places which they might have produced something more better even, right? So always just say, as per our knowledge, this is the best thing which we found so far, right? Things like that. So these are the common, the things which editors always look into as well and can get annoyed. When you look into the paper section is like this. So title, it should be very clear, describes the content. So sometimes maybe your study is very good, but your title is not really good, right? Because I can't maybe able to see what is this study about from the title. So your title is very important as well, that it should stand alone as well. Then authors, ensure recognition for the writers. Whoever contributed with you in a group, always try to discuss with them that who, and how you want to add them into the authors group. The abstract describes what was done. So actually your whole paper is summarized in an abstract. And I always encourage to keep the abstract within 150 words, 250 words. Because if you draft your abstract more than these words, most of the journals ask only the words limit within this. So if some journal is asking 350 words, so if you have abstract already in 250 words, then it will be easy for you to just, submit as it is. You don't have to make it 350. But if your word limit is more and journal is asking 250, then you have to cut paste, right? Then you have to do a rework from the beginning. So why not, when you are writing in the first time, just make it, in a middle ground way where most of the journals can able to fit best, right? So because if some journals are asking 250 words, then your abstract will work as well. Some journal might ask 200 words. So it depends. But if some journals are asking only 150 words, then of course you have to reduce a lot. But most of time, the average number of words for abstract is 250 words. Keywords are very important as well. So ensure the article is correctly identified in abstracting services. So let's say if you are searching paper for your research, right? And you have specific topic on that. And you will put the keyword, right, only in the search bar. So and all the papers who have used those keywords will be automatically pulled up by the database. But imagine if you did not use the right keywords, then your paper will not appear in that search. So that's why right keywords are very important as well, that you want to put into the paper. Introduction, I mentioned already. Method, results, and discussion. That introduction is explain the problem, method is explain how the data were collected, results describes what was discovered. Discussion is, discuss the implications of the study. Then there's an acknowledgement. Sometimes you have some funding acknowledgement who help you to do the research. Sometimes you have some people who help to do research, but you cannot add them as an authors. And sometimes you have some people who help you in the maybe data collection, data analysis, or editing of the paper and things like that. References, ensure previously published work is recognized. So always try to search carefully, and the references should be up to date as well. So if you are doing study now, always try to find references which are very, recent ones, not very old ones. Then appendices. Some journals call this as a supplementary data, because you cannot put everything in one paper. So you sometimes have to provide supplementary information, the database. So it is very important as well that if you think that this is the important information, but you cannot add into the paper, then you can provide as a supplementary file. So for example, most of the journals will ask you to have maximum 5 table or figures. Right? So 5 table and figures maximum. Maybe there are 3 tables and 2 figures, or maybe 3 figures and 2 tables, right? So in this kind of case, maybe you have 7 tables, or 7 tables or figures. Now 2 are extra. So what you can do is you can refer them in the paper, but you can put as a supplementary file the 2 extra ones. So this is how, and then what will happen is that all the things will be there, but as supplementary some of the information. So if somebody wants to look, they can click on there and can look into that information. Title is the backbone of any articles. Whoever look into the article, they will look into that what is important from the title. So it's like a news heading, right? So whenever you look into the news, you look into the title and then you are curious about that. Same about the research paper as well. Your title has to be standalone title. So a good title should contain fewest possible words and adequately describe the content, right? So what you should do is to convey the main findings of the research, be specific, be concise, be complete, and attract readers. What you want to avoid is don't use unnecessary jargons. You do not use uncommon abbreviations, neither ambiguous terms or unnecessary detail, or focus on the content as well. So for example, this is a title, which is saying slower processing is correlated with higher levels and blah, blah, and it's like a full paragraph. And if I'm an editor, I will feel like, oh, this is something, they want to explain everything in the title, which is not really a good practice. So what we suggest is try to be precise like this, so you can able to capture most of the things into that specific title. And then abstract is another important thing. So the quality of abstract will strongly influence the editor's decision, and that's true, because editors don't have time to read the 15 pages draft. And imagine they are receiving plenty of papers every day, right? And most of the editors is not a paid job; it's a voluntarily job because they are working in academics. So right, so maybe they don't have enough time. They're not doing full-time things. So abstract has to be very standalone, and also because sometimes in some regions they cannot able to download full paper, right? You need to require some subscription, so only the title and the abstract will appear. So if you want to download the full paper, you have to pay for that, right? So that's why title and the abstract should be clear, so the people can able to understand from the abstract. So a good abstract should be precise and honest, should be crisp, concise, and accurate, can stand alone, uses no technical jargons, should be brief and specific, and you should not cite any reference in the abstract. There shouldn't be any reference in the abstract. And you need to make your abstract like you're trying to sell your article. So it should be like this way. Structured abstracts. So some journals will ask you to structure the abstract. Some journal will ask you unstructured abstract. Structured abstract means you need to have a specific headings within the abstract, and different journals will have different type of headings expectation as well. So as I already mentioned, that 250 words is, I suggest mostly in 100 words for each section. And the purpose, sometimes journal will ask you to, to structure the abstract into purpose, design, findings, research, limitation, implications, practical implications, or a discussion or the conclusion. So research, the purpose, what is the aim of your paper, any reason, question. Design is the methodology, how it was done. Finding is the results and discussion. And then, implications like, what you want to do, maybe policy implication or some other kind of initiatives. So keywords are important for indexing as well. As I already mentioned, they enable your manuscript to be easily identified and cited. Traditionally, the journal requests you to provide 5 to 10 keywords, and why they ask you to provide 5 to 10 keywords, because they add those 5 to 10 keywords into the system. Keywords should be specific, relevant to your study, avoid uncommon abbreviations and journal terms, and try to use mesh terms. And when we say mesh terms, because the database has already defined terms, right? Like PubMed has the mesh terms. So it will be easy for them to map your paper to the relevant key terms. So for example, there is a term called cancer, right? But cancer have some other terms as well, mesh. So some people might be trying to find oncology, right? Or maybe oncogenesis, right? So things like that. Then there's a section introduction. Introduction for the paper, provide the necessary background information to put your work into context, right? It should be clear from the introduction that why the current work was performed, the aims and significance, and what has been done before, and what was done in your research in brief terms, and what was achieved in brief terms as well. So you don't have to write everything, whatever have done in the history in the introduction. You have to only write the relevant, very specific relevant to your paper, and write why it is important and the aim on the significance of your research and what was done before and what you're going to do. When drafting an introduction, you need to consult the guide for authors for word limit, right? When writing a paper, keep in mind that you are trying to set a scene, because that's the first section, introduction, right? Like a story. Outline the problem and hypothesis very clearly. Ensure that the literature cited is balanced, up-to-date, and relevant. As I mentioned already, do not cite extraordinary papers, because if you find 100 papers, you don't necessarily have to cite all 100 papers, right? So you have to balance. Ensure that the literature cited is not just your literature, right? Sometimes people have the self-citation or other groups too. Define any non-standard abbreviation or jargons as well if you have used in the first time. What you should avoid in the introduction is write an extensive review of the field. Like I just mentioned, that don't write too much introduction. Also, don't cite disappropriately of your own work or colleagues' work or any other papers. Do not describe method, results, or conclusion in the introduction part. Introduction should be just introduction, right? Because you will have the other section separate. And do not overuse the terms like novel or for the first time, because as I mentioned in the beginning, you'd never know, right? Because you might not have access to all the information. So methods components. Standard sequence of method is to have a study design, like what design you use. You use case control, cohort, other kind of methods. Then there's a population description should be clear if you have patients or other information. Definitions of endpoints, if you have any specific points. And then the statistics analysis, what method you use, right? And which specific methods, which tools you use. And also about the ethics, whether this study requires ethics approval or you don't need to have ethics approval, or it's an exemplary ethical approval, right? Your method should be reproducible. Means if somebody wants to do the same study somewhere else, they can able to do that using the same resources. But you're not expected to do it as well, like exactly making very plain as well. So just be in a normal way. I mean to say is like have to be very cautious as well. So result sections. Results are the main findings of the research. So what you should do in the results is to describe participants or sample population in the results, like demographics. The basic demographics comes in the results section, right? Like, for example, you recruited 200 people from which settings, what was the age groups, what were the differences, and things like that, right? Usually we have one table called the demographic table. Then there are the primary outcomes and secondary other outcomes, like maybe you are focusing on the main things, and then you also have some other things you identified during the research, right? Not necessarily every time when you start something you have the same answer. Maybe you identified something new along with that. Always try to have the tables and figures to summarize your results. Don't be very descriptive. Try to show your results in the tables or figures. That's a more appropriate way. And compare like with like, right? For example, if you are doing some comparison, saying that, this male with 50 years and this, then compare with other group as well. What you should avoid is do not interpret the results, right? Do not explain what is this mean of these results, right? Because that will be coming in the discussion, right? This is just a fine. And do not duplicate. If you have already represented data in the figure or tables, then don't also write in the text as well. So either you write in text or either you show in a table or figure. Don't repeat that. And use the graphics to illustrate that can be easily summarized. So do not make the very basic graphics for everything. If you can explain something just with the text, you don't have to make a table or figure for them. Then next section is discussion. Discussion is you have to describe how the results relate to the study, right? Study aims and hypotheses, how the findings relate to those of the other studies, right? So you are actually trying to now compare your findings with the other literature in the discussion section. So you have to find the relevant literature to compare, to explain that why your results are like this and they're different. Maybe they use the different methods, right? Or maybe the different settings. So there could be different things. And also the theoretical implications and possible practical implications of your study as well. All possible interpretations of your findings. And also write the limitations of the study. Because, sometimes you don't have everything available, right? So there could be limitations of the studies. As I mentioned in the beginning, that maybe you have limitation of the resources, so you can only able to do the study in one setting or one hospital. That could be having the different, results. And then also the strengths of your study as well, right? And the future research directions. What you should avoid is to making the grand statements. Like I mentioned before, right? Like, this is a novel study, you can do this and stuff. So you have to be careful with that. Then there's a conclusion section. In the conclusion, you just have to conclude the key findings and the applications of your study. You don't have to write everything again. If you have wrote something already, you don't have to repeat in the conclusion. So conclusion is just to summarize in a very brief way that what do you have find. So put your study into context, identify key findings, that this is what you found and what are the implications, and describe how it represents an advance in the field, and suggest if there's anything further, if you have any experiments or some other things you want to suggest for the other researchers to do. What you should avoid is to do the repetition and not over speculating, and also don't overemphasize as well. So acknowledgement is also very important. So acknowledge anyone who helped you in the study, including help in writing, editing language, offered critical comments, provided technical help, state why people have been acknowledged, and ask their preference as well, right? So acknowledge source of funding, including grants or any other references as well. That's also very important. For references, you need to cite the current and key pertinence references, References, citations must be accurate and complete. Correct reference style. Always check what journal asked for, because if your reference is not correct, then it will not make a sense. So it will be difficult for them to find as well. And keep an organized bibliometric, or bibliographic library. In the EndNote is a software, or people use Mendeley or different softwares. What you should avoid is personal communication or any unpublished observations, because if you just know, if you heard that someone is doing something but it's not published, you don't have any evidence, right? And also citing articles published in a local language, try to avoid if you can, right? Because not everybody can understand those. And excessive self-citation, avoid that. Of course, you are expert in your field and you might be doing a lot of research in the field, but only cite the relevant thing which you think is, maybe sometimes you're doing one project and the next project is relevant to that project. So that's why you can able to link them. Supplementary material is information related to and supportive to of the main text, but of secondary importance, right? As I mentioned already, that for example, you have multiple things, but you don't have enough space in the paper, so you can provide as a supplementary file. So the main things are in the paper, but the remaining things are as a supplementary file. And supplementary information usually is available online when the manuscript is published. So they provide the link to the online sources. Table or figures, tables to present list of numbers, text in columns. Figures are the visual representation or illustration of the concepts and methods, and always need to have a caption, must be standalone. Means if you have a table, you should have a table's legend, like the table title. What is this table about? If you have a figure, what is this figure about? So you have to have a clear title of the figure as well. Guidelines for figures and tables. It should be always in high resolution. When it converts to PDF, the resolution goes down. It should be neat, legible labels, simple, clearly formatted, indicate error if there's any, and detail the captions, right? So it should be very clear, not just like table 1 is demographics. You have to explain the whole, what is exactly. So the people who can look into the table can look into your title and understand what does this mean. Ethics in scientific writing is also very important. What you have to do is to be factual, be honorable, legal, truthful, be objective and accurate. You should avoid to deceive, falsify, fabricate, or plagiarize. So this is very important. It could have a serious consequences. Ethics in scientific writing. There's an authorship issues comes in as well. Sometimes people working in a group so who want to be first, second, or lead and all these kind of things. So you have to do this internally to make sure you are okay with that. Then informed consent, institutional review board, ethical review board. If you have already, the patients or the participants, so whether you have already got their approval or consent. Acknowledging past and the present contributions of others as well. So it is very important. And if you're doing clinical trial, register the clinical trial online. Acknowledge the grants and fundings if you have received for doing research, and avoid any other duplications as well. So if you have published already, you cannot publish the same thing again. So you have to avoid that too. What is plagiarism? So the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing through its own, like saying that this is your own and you're not acknowledging the other. You can find further information on the link as well. And plagiarism is a serious offense, and that could lead to, first of all, the editors, they reject the paper immediately, or if they can also have the academic charges, serious consequences, and the termination of employment as well if you're working in somewhere, a research institution. And it will seriously affect your scientific reputation as well. Conflict of interest is also important. So a person has a conflict of interest when he or she has an attribute that is invisible to the reader or editor, but which may affect his or her judgment, right? So how should we manage it? Should we ignore it? No, we cannot ignore because it's unacceptable. And should we avoid? This is also hard. So disclose to the editor, author, or reader. Yeah, that might need to be considered, but it always depends in the context. So it's always better to make it clear. Now is section 2. So before I move to section 2, I just want to pause for a second and ask if there's any question so far at this stage.
Okay, please wait a minute. I need to check. So for the student, if you have question related to the first section, you can ask by writing in the chat box or maybe raise your hand. For the participants that join by YouTube streaming, you also can put in the chat box and the host will. Okay, so Mr. Hari Rudijanto.
Okay, thank you, Miss Dina.
Okay.
Thank you for interesting for Prof. Usman Iqbal ya. Okay. My name Haru Dijanto, IW from Postgraduate Public Health University of State Semarang. So, Mr. Prof. Usman, we have experience writing scientific journal, article journal. The first reviewer agreed, while the other rejected. In the end, the editor said that the article was rejected, Mr. Usman. So, what do you think? How did will happen? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Usman.
Okay, so I think Mr. Hari has experience related the result of the research paper submission. They have two reviewers. The first reviewer is accepted, but the second reviewer is reject. And
rejected,
yes, rejected it. Then the editor said that the paper is rejected. So the question from the Mr. Hari, how about your perspective as an editor of the journal for this kind of case? And maybe as a researcher, can we like give feedback or send a letter to the editor if we have like a 50 accepted and 50% not accepted and something like that. Okay,
I totally understand this frustration. We most of time have these issues coming, even like myself as an author as well. So then it depends on the comments you receive. For example, if you receive comments from the other reviewer who recommended reject, but the comments are not very tough that you think that you can able to address the comments easily with the revision, then I would suggest you write to editor and say that these comments are addressable and we would like to request for rebuttal, that we can try to improve our paper and we want to resubmit. Are you willing to re-review? Then some of the editors will take that into consideration and provide an opportunity depending on the comments, to see the comments. Sometimes, because the humans are just humans and their evaluations are different too. So sometimes, of course, not two reviewers always agree with each other. So maybe one reviewer, the other one thought maybe this need to be extensive work, but maybe it's just for you is like, not extensive work to do and you can able to revise that. Maybe you have the data and you can reanalyze the data and change the method and stuff like that. So in your case, I would suggest, yes, you should write in email to editor request for rebuttal, and say that you can try your best, and you as an authors group think that you can able to revise this paper for the reviewers evaluation again. And this is very normal thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you. How about Mr. Hari?
Yeah, sometimes we have confusion, yeah, sometimes confusion, but one reviewer said the article need specific hypothesis, yeah, specific, but the other reviewer said no hypothesis, yeah.
Oh,
So finally, the editor said the manuscript, our manuscript is disclaimed. Gitu. Yeah,
oh,
itu said. So I was confusing,
oh, okay.
Mr. Usman. Thank you.
No,
I
I
get it.
think
So
yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah.
Mr. Hari maybe also has another experience. How about if the first reviewer suggested something that it's like contra with the contradiction with the second reviewer. As a researcher, what we should do?
As I mentioned already, that they have the different feedback, right? So at the end, the editor is the one who have to make the final decision. And there are many cases where one reviewer say reject and the other reviewer say accept. And sometimes, in some cases, we reject, in some cases, we accept. And the reason is we look into the comments as well, not just the recommendation. So let's say if I have a paper and I have the feedback coming and the reviewer say reject, but the comments are, I feel like, oh, this can be revised. And the other reviewer have reviewed very well and say that, oh, need minor revision. Then I will maybe making a major revision because based on the analysis, right? So that's why the editor make the decision, not the reviewer. Reviewers cannot make a decision. Reviewers only make recommendation. So the decision final is in editor's hand. So let's say if you are not satisfied with one reviewer, you can always send an email request to editor and saying that maybe, you want to have different reviewers to review this paper, right? But it's not guaranteed that the different reviewer will have the same feedback as well. So, and to find reviewers are very tough. And I always thanks Dr. Dina, to help me to review papers as well, because it's always challenging to find a reviewer because of volunteer work.
Yes.
And to go through the whole paper to review takes time. And because you are actually, have to read the paper to provide feedback, and it's a time-taking thing. So that's why, imagine if there are multiple papers, it takes time. And so ultimately, the decision is in editor's hand, not the reviewer. Reviewers are only providing a recommendation. And sometimes the reviewers, accept this, but no comments. And you cannot also make decision, just say accept, right? So also you have to take into consideration the reviewer's quality. So, and sometimes authors suggest the reviewers, but they suggest sometimes their friend, and that's also not ethically good, right? Because sometimes some people suggest, and of course we understand that the friends are in the same field or something, but if they are providing a real good feedback, and I have some people who provide very good feedback, but they knew, but still they just assess as a standalone research, because it's not like they are reviewing the person or they are criticizing the person. They are actually evaluating the research. At the end, it's helping your research, right? So this is how it works. I hope I answered clearly.
Okay. So Mr. Hari, are you satisfied with the answer?
Okay, thank you for Mr. Usman. Anytime you will help us to upload to manuscript up to journal because I have no experience. Yeah. I hope so. Will you help us to subscribe to article journal anytime?
No worries. What is the
I hope Professor Usman will be our young professor and maybe supervise some thesis in our university, so we can ask some question if we have a question related the submission of the article, since he has a lot of experience as the editor. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
pleasure
it's
to
my
have
pleasure.
him. Yeah.
So may I ask, Harry, what's your paper title?
A paper title with about title for dissertation title about air pollution. Air pollution with is connected public health.
Okay, that's why you're sitting at the beach, huh?
Yes, his thesis is related the air population and public health problems. So relates relate or he study about influence of the air population with the public health problems.
And what method you use, Harry, in the study?
About matter of like material air pollution, like what sulfur SO8, yeah, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, or particle matter 2.5 micrometer. So two connected nasopharyngitis acute disease.
Oh, so what kind of design you use? Are you
This one for my design, my experience like nested from Nestina from you for pre-qualification yeah nested.
He used nested case control to
Nested case control, Mr. Usman.
Relationship between the air pollution with nasopharynx problems.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean we can discuss. So I just wanted to I was interested. You know, the climate change is nowadays a hot topic, you know, and even in the public health informatics is important, climate change or climate, you know. So I think this topic is still important.
Yes.
So if you link something to public health informatics, where Dr. Dina can even advise you more because she's, you know, have done work on that, I think then it will bring your paper a little bit up, keeping from the very basic to a little bit more advanced level. For example, like if you just say public health and air pollution, maybe you say public health informatics, you want to do something related to technology or informatics might help. And we can discuss more in detail later on too. So any other question, or I move to the next section?
Yes. The second question is from Sulistiawati, but I think the question is related with the second section because I think it's related with, do you have any recommendation related the international journal that's maybe easy to access or to accept it, like it's her question is related international journal requirement are easy to accept. Are there any journal recommendation? Hello, Sulistiawati, do you mean you ask related recommendation journal that may be easy to accept it, the paper, something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
There is no easy journal. You know, if so, we have to try fast. Even I'm telling that, like me, I have to submit to multiple times to the journals, and it's just an always an experience to do that. But what I recommend all the time is try to find a relevant journal first. and then start from there. And then also, when you have your paper, you know that which journal will likely to get your paper at least to a review, right? Because there's no guarantee from anywhere that this journal is going to publish for sure, even after the revision. So it's clear that we cannot guarantee, we don't know what could happen. So there's simple answer is there is no easy journal at all, but always try your best. Okay.
And
Yeah.
is it are you satisfied, Sulistiawati, related with the answer?
Yes, it need to our
You can use bahasa and I will translate to Professor Usman. It's okay.
yeah, I'm so sorry because in there is very cold. Thank you for the time. I want to say there are any journal recommendation it easy to accept or international journal recommend are easy. It's been apakah ada jurnal yang memang dibutuhkan itu lebih mudah kita untuk artinya jarang di decline or accept but with revision seperti kasus Mr. before me in answer at first reviewer it accept but a second reviewer is decline. Nah, it's mean this article, Mr. That it.
Mr. Hari, yes.
I'm so sorry because
You can use bahasa.
Okay. Nah, it's mean Mr. Hari article is decline. But I want to recommend it journal is accept, but with revision, not decline.
It's similar. It's not easy
Yes.
to
Yes.
Even I think even Professor Usman has a more than 100 paper. It's not a guarantee that when he submit and he always accepted by the by the journal. That's why as a researcher or even Professor Usman as an editor, he can't mention which journal that easily accepted the paper because
It's like that.
yes, because each international journal has they follow the international guideline how to filtering the paper submission.
I tell you my recent experience. I was very frustrated when I submitted the paper and we got rejected. And we submitted the paper and got rejected. And we were like, we have spent a lot of effort on this paper, and this is very important, nice topic, but it's just getting rejected even without review. Imagine like to submit it and tomorrow we are getting rejection letter. Submit it and in the eve we are getting the rejection letter. This is, I mean, this is how it is. And sometimes, as I already mentioned, that if your title and sometimes abstract, even though it's good, but maybe the journal have a lot of papers coming to them. So they just need to pick very handful because, you know, is always a challenge for them to process all the papers or to find the reviewers, right?
Yes.
And they cannot publish everything coming in. Sometimes even, you know, paper is very good, but maybe the relevant journal reject, and maybe you end up publishing somewhere else, which is even more better journal. Who knows, right? I mean, it depends how you start with, because we start with the journal, the high impact videos, then we go and see that how things are. But sometimes maybe some other journals are, right?
Yeah.
So this is just recent experience. We're still waiting for that. So I'm just telling you that it's very hard to say, and there's no universal rule to say, oh, you know, this is an easy journal or hard. until unless you are not going to any predatory journal. What we call predatory journal are the journals which are similar names or we don't know their prestige, right? So always look carefully about the journal, that if this journal is well-established journal, is this the exactly journal you're looking for? Have they published enough papers? Are there good enough citations? What is the editorial board look like? Then you go for the journal. Okay. Otherwise, sometimes people end up losing their research because they publish somewhere and then they cannot able to have another journal.
Yeah.
It's so confusing sometimes. I can tell you, it's very confusing. Like even I'm in a editorial experience, so I sometimes have difficulty with the same name journal. So many different journals. So you have to be very, very careful. Always check the journals from your university library.
Yeah.
So your university library might have the list of the journals, then narrow down from there, then look into the link, then go through the details, and then submit. And try your, you might be getting reject from 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, but ending up publishing somewhere in the journal. And you will have that, then you will try even more and you will learn more. It's come with experience.
Yes.
You know, I can tell you there was one paper and we submitted to 50 plus journals. It got rejected. And you know, one time it just rejected after 1 year. Can you imagine the paper for 1 year and then rejecting 1 year and rejecting? So you feel as a researcher that, oh, why they're rejecting after 1 year? If they really have to reject, they should have rejected earlier. So at least we could have submitted somewhere else, right? And also, the comments were very minor. It was like, no, something like which we can't do much. And I don't know why they just done this. And I was editor too, but you know, we cannot do much. What we can do is just to accept. And I already answered Hari on that, is that if you are satisfied with the decision, you always can write to editor email saying that these are the comments and you are not satisfied. Please give me the reason why you rejected and all these things. If you think one reviewer has rejected, one has accepted, or one has minor comments and you can able to address the comment, and sometimes you think that, oh, these comments doesn't make much sense, because you don't have to take everything into consideration which reviewer said, right? Because reviewer is just giving recommendations. So ultimately seen is by the editor.
That's
So I wish you all the best to find a good journal and publish good.
yes, I mean.
Yes,
It's
thank you
like
so much for the answer.
I saw another hand raised. I
Yes.
think it's Salma.
Yes, I have international students from Africa. Okay, Wanali Salma, the screen
That's
is yours.
great.
Yes, you can ask your question.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So my question is just very simple. As beginners in writing, is it like possible for me to, if I have my case study when I'm writing, to be like my country? I'm from Uganda.
Sorry, we cannot hear you clearly. If you can use a microphone a little bit closer to your.
Okay, so let me just. It's better?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Hi, my name is Salma. Thank you so much, Professor, for your presentation. So I wanted to ask, like, if I've been writing my thesis and my case study is in a background of my country, Uganda, is it possible if I have to write my article journal to change something really small? Okay, it could not be really small, but it's the same topic, the same concept, just changing the region. If my thesis was about Uganda, and then I want to write a case study of Indonesia. How possible is that? As in,
And
how
have
bad?
you published? Have you published already or not yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, so you can do that. You can do 2 case studies using the same method and same you can do the 2 case studies. You can do one case study from one setting and the second case study from the second studies. You know, people do the case studies because it's a totally different region, right?
Yes.
There's no problem as long as it's not exactly same content, means it's rewritten. But the concept is same, is fine, but it's a rewritten and different setting.
And also, if I have to change the content, how difficult can it get? Like, can it like mess up my whole article? Or would you advise me to stick to like the same case study? Like if I'm doing something about Uganda, I still write the article in relation to Uganda with the data from Uganda. Or would you advise otherwise? Like I wanted like to change and use a case study of Indonesia eventually.
I would suggest to, if you want to do the second case study, start from scratch, not one same paper to change to the other one, because then that will not stick to anyone. So if you are writing a case study, then start from scratch, because you have to set the scene for that particular study. You have to find the relevant literature, relevant settings for there. Then you will not have trouble to, you know, change a content a lot from the one draft to another, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
it will be good to start from the new. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No
All
worries.
right, thank you.
Mister, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I have an article, but this article I have a plan if I will submit at the international journal, but my article only discuss about supplement corn for increases the breast milk, but this population only 100 with a control, case control, because I have a case control, but every reviewer said that it cannot publish at the international because only the population maybe under 100. Is that really that the population related with accepted the journal also?
I got the point. So Miss Agnes asking, is it the sample size is matter in the international journal?
Yes, it matters in international journal. So it is very important that when you are doing a study, you need to figure out that what is the minimum sample size requirement for that particular study design. And based on that, you can able to submit. So most of the journals, they will look into everything, and methodology is very important as well. So if you don't have enough sample size or enough, you know, case control sample, then the findings will, you know, the generalizability of those findings will be a challenge. So that's why it is very important to consider everything, so including sample size. So yes, in short, sample size is very important as well and plays an important role. Okay. So if no more question, we should move to the second section.
Yes, I think
And then
because the time limit, we can continue to the next session. Okay.
So section 2 is how to find a suitable for your manuscript. So select the best journal for submission. And of course, it's always a challenge as well. So first of all, I suggest to look from your references, because once you have already cited references, the references are actually the one who are given to your paper, right? So those references are actually giving you a kind of direction. So you narrow down from there. And also look into the recent, you know, publications in each journal. whenever you look into the journal, not just go to the journal directly, but also look into the papers, what they publish. Sometimes it is very important to figure out, what kind of papers they are publishing. And also ask yourself the following question, like, who is the journal's audience, right? If you want to publish in a public health journal, then you are looking for the audience from public health. And what is the impact factor of the journal, right? Because some countries required to publish in an impact factor journal, some countries are okay. So it depends on your institution as well. Impact factor is kind of like a, kind of a, we can say, quality criteria for people. Sometimes if they want to identify the journal, they can go through the impact factor and say that, because this is well established or, well cited journal. And what is the average publication time? As I mentioned, some of the journals, like I had experience 1 year, they took the paper and rejecting after without just minor comments. So that's really annoying. And in 1 year, a lot of things has been changed, right? Or could change. So you have to always keep in mind what is the time process for them. And nowadays, the journal on their website as well. And what is the access, right? Is an open access, subscribed, free for charge, or, some journals are fully open access, but they will provide waiver to specific countries as well, and sometimes discounts as well, and some are optional. And decide on one journal. Please don't submit to multiple journals. Sometimes people do mistake is they submit the same paper to the 2 or 3 different journals at the same time, and they think that, oh, maybe one journal will process the paper so we can withdraw from other. No, never ever do that. So sometimes the journal systems are same. So they can know, oh, this person has submitted to multiple journals, and then they make a red flag to you, and you can never ever able to submit again. Okay, so that would be because they will label the authors like this, right? So what are actually open access journals? So open access are scholarly journals that are available without financial or technical barriers other than access, right? So if you're publishing in an open access journal, it's available everywhere. And articles are either accessible from publisher and sometimes from database repository like PubMed. And in most cases, the copyright is owned by the author, not the publisher. Some open access journals are subsidized by academic or government institutions. So, for example, sometimes universities subscribe to specific journals as well. Open access journal options. There are free based open access require payment by the author, and often authors usually pay from their research grants. And sometimes there are delayed open access journals, means you don't have to pay any, but your paper will be available after 6 months or 24 months. Then there are some hybrid open access journals, which contain some current articles and provide free access to them too. So what are the high impact factor journals actually? So impact factor journal is actually the frequency of citations. So the more impact factor means the more this journal gets cited by the other journal. And high impact factor journals are the ones which have high frequency of citations by others. And this is actually superficial thing, right? But internationally accepted as well. It's a kind of measure of quality, as I already mentioned, that most of people think that, oh, they want to find a quality journal. So high impact factor journals are the quality journals. Why it is important to publish in this high impact factor journal? Because either your option is you publish or perish, right? Means either you want to publish somewhere or you just don't care about that. And if you publish, then it will have a greater variety of research findings, right? So if you publish in a high impact factor journal, you will be having the findings from the all around. People will cite. Increased chances of citations and greater recognition among peers, because if you publish in a high impact factor journal, then of course you will have the acknowledgement from university, from friends, peers, and of course associated with the allowance and promotions as well. And what journal editors and reviewers want? So what do journal editors and reviewers want? They look into, is this manuscript sufficiently novel? Is the manuscript of broad enough interest? If these things are balanced, then they will provide an opportunity to review the paper, right? But if your paper is not novel and the aims and scope are, it's not really fitting with their journal, then you will have less likely chances that they will consider the paper. And of course, journals want authority, right? So what they're looking for is originality, significance advance in the field, show a well-designed study, and readability, and studies that meet ethical standards. What they don't want is the duplications. If there are reports with no scientific interest, if there is someone has done study 5 years back and they are now submitting that is out of date, studies with insufficient data or no conforms with requirements. So, for example, if you're submitting a paper but you don't follow journal guidelines, the editor without, they don't want to look into the paper because it doesn't follow the format. So they will just reject, even with telling you that, oh, your paper, because sometimes your paper is very good, but what authors do is they don't follow the guidelines and just submit to the journal. That's practice too, because if you don't put effort to the paper to follow the guidelines, then they, of course, you can't expect editors as well to look into. So what gets you to acceptance? If you pay attention to details, check and double check your work, consider reviews, English must be as good as possible, presentation is important, take your time with revision, acknowledge those who have helped you, new, original, and previously unpublished, critically evaluate your own manuscript, ethical rules must be obeyed, and this leads you towards acceptance. Now is section 3. So what things to do before submission? This is also very important section because you always have to make sure if you have developed or done very good study, if you don't pay attention before submission, as I mentioned, then of course you will have less chances that editor will look into the paper. Sometimes the editorial assistants, they will just send back. The responsibilities of authors from preparation of manuscript to submission. You have to keep in mind, again, is new and original research. You have checked all the listed authors, obtained copyright permission if you are using someone's figures tables that need to reproduce. Always check proper affiliation and acknowledgement. Also check to which division of the journal should your manuscript be submitted, because sometimes the journal have different categories, right? So if it's which category it fits. The public health is very broad, right? So maybe there are some subspecialties. Does your paper adhere the journal guidelines? Is very so follow. If they ask how many number of words, how many references, how many tables, how many figures, all these things are very important in the format. Is your manuscript tied with generous margins? Is correct number of copies supplied? Is your illustrations or your figures are ready for publication? Your numbers in the tables are correct. Each table is on a separate sheet. Does your paper meet the length, the word limitation I've already mentioned, right? So for example, if the journal asks for 3,000 words and you have 5,000 words, there are some journals that don't want to process that. So references are complete. Have you used mandatory international system unit? Because why we have to focus on the international unit? Because you are publishing in an international, so you look for the international. Have you obtained permission for figures previously published? And have you double checked the spellings of authors' names and your references too? Why I always say authors' names is because, always make sure it's correct, because once you online, then you cannot correct your author's name and information. Author contribution, who did what? Authorship should be based on substantial contribution. So you cannot put authors if they not contribute. So conception and design or analysis, interpretation of the data, drafting the article or revising it critically for important intellectual content, final of the version to be published. Always share with your co-authors as well that this is a draft final version, so they can review and to flag if there's any small errors. Then cover letter is very important in the journal. So competition for publication space for editors' attention is very important. It may be not enough to send a cover letter to a journal editors like this. And if someone sent to editor like this, then what do you expect from editor? Of course, less than this time to read, right? What I'm trying to say here is that you have to be justify yourself as well to do, like what you want to do, So you need to convince the editor by having the proper things, right? General rules for the cover letter are: address the editor personally, state your manuscript title and publication type, give a brief background rational description of your results, explain the importance of finding, why they would be, taking interest to your paper, and provide corresponding author details as well. And editor name should be there if there is, or address to at least the journal. I sometimes find cover letters where the authors submit to one journal and they reject it and they just submit as it is to the other journal, and the of the other journals is still in the cover letter and submitting to another journal. So means they are not putting effort in that. So this is not a justification. To give the background to the research, what was done and what was found, the significance of your research, interest to journal readers, confirm the origin of the submission, confirm that there are no competing or final interest or corresponding address as well. So it should be like this. So you can see here, it's a cover letter. You can there is a corresponding author details, and then there is a title of the study, and then the to editor-in-chief and the journal name, and then background of the research, like what is this study about, what are the main findings, and then you can see another what was done and what was focused, and then how it will be interested to the journal. And then also you have to mention that you follow the journal guidelines and you have ethical approval and everything is clear. So this is giving at least a clear indication to the editor. Then recommending reviewers. Who are these? Are they expert? Read as much as possible. Know your competitors. Provide a reason for recommending excluding a reviewer. If you say, "Oh, I want to recommend this reviewer," so you need to provide a reason, right? And if you are, sometimes you have, of course, someone you don't want them to review. Maybe they are your competitors, or maybe they are not in good terms with you. So you can mention that you don't want this person to be reviewed, and this is the reason. Maybe some issues with them. Editor has final decision on the reviewer choice. So this is already mentioned in the beginning that whatever reviewer will provide recommendation, so ultimate decision is in the hands of editor. Section 4 is how journals usually process your paper. It's not a black hole, so it's very clear that authors submit paper, and when they submit the paper, then the editor or editorial office will check for the basic requirements met or not. So basic requirement means they follow the format, number of words, and everything. And also they check if this is within their scope and enough high priority. If it is enough priority, then they will process further to assign to the deputy editor or assign reviewers further. If it's not, then they will reject from there, and that's what we call desktop reject. So let's say if they invite reviewers, then the reviewer will provide recommendation, and then you can see that then the editor will look into the reviews, comments, and then will make a decision. So whether editor make a decision to reject based on the comments, think that maybe these comments are not able to revise with the revision only, maybe need to do much more work. Sometimes they think, oh, this can be addressed. We should provide an opportunity to the authors. So if they want to invite, they will send you major or minor revision, or if they think it's not possible, they will just reject it. So if they send major or minor revision, then you have to address the comments properly. Each and every comment, please address separately, not overall, okay? Because then they will match and see that if you address properly. As I mentioned before, that you don't necessarily have to, can you be okay with every reviewer comments, and sometimes the reviewer just provide recommendations. So if you are not convinced with their comments, you can tell them yeah, we cannot change in this, maybe we can do another experiment next time in the future in another research or something, if something is major to do. So let's say if you submit back, then it will go to editor, and the editor will check that and reassign to reviewers. And if say this paper is now address all comments, then it will go back to editor, and editor will make decision to accept or reject. So what is a peer review process? So it's exciting the reviewer's mind is far, important than exciting the reader's mind, because reviewers are the one who will read your paper more in depth, in detail. So it is likely that no one will ever read your paper more thoroughly than the reviewer, right? Because they will be like reviewing in detail. So suggest referees that appropriate your work, and be political as well sometimes. What are the constraints of peer review? I mentioned in the beginning as well that it's slow. Sometimes there are conflictive. Sometimes there's a confronting theory bias as well. Sometimes there's a personal views, objectives, and personal edits. There could be fraud, data manipulation, and invention as well. So, for example, if you get a request for revision, means it's a good news for you, right? Means you have an opportunity now. So you are now in a publishing cycle. Nearly every published case is, at least have one revision opportunity, because they cannot take as it is. So don't panic. And even if the comments are sharp or discouraging, they are not personal. And because they are criticizing the work, not to you. How to revise your case? Acknowledge the editor and set a revision deadline, because there's always a deadline. So don't skip those deadlines. If you disagree, explain why to the editor. Okay, so some of the comments, as I mentioned, you don't have to agree with all the comments. If you disagree with the comment, you can explain. Clarify understanding if in doubt. This is what I understand the comments to mean. And then consult with colleagues or co-authors and tend to point them. Meet the revision deadline. Attach a covering letter which identifies point by point how revision, you revised all the points. So for example, like the change will not improve the case because of this and that, right? What if your case is rejected? So you don't have to give up. Everybody have, been rejected at least once. At least me, I've got several times rejected for the same paper. So ask why and listen carefully. So most editors will give detailed comments about a rejected case. So take a deep breath and, listen and what is being said. Try again, try to improve the case and resubmit. So do your homework and then target again to the right journal and keep trying. So positive outcomes of rejections is kind of, help you to improve your work, at least with the feedback, and good experience of how the system works, right? So you will know how it is working. And if you get accepted, then of course, congratulations to you. Following a lot of hard work and at least one revision, your case, is or accepted. So in all the years, I've been and I have not accepted a single case or submission. This is a quotation from the editor, that every time a paper comes, they at least have revision opportunity for them. The typical editor comment. So revision and proofreading. So let's say if your paper get accepted, then the journal will send you an email of proofreading after a week, usually, or a few days, and they will ask you to double check. So they will type edit the paper and they will ask you to double check. And why they make sure to double check is because sometimes they want to make sure your names, authors' names, affiliations is correct, spellings are correct, the vocabulary, or if they have typeset anything, are you happy with that? Then there's a last section 5 is why and how promotion of your paper is important. Because once you publish, then why is it important to promote your paper? First of all, you want to support educators, train globally, right? That's why you share your paper that you publish so people can look into your paper. You want to raise your profile, attract collaborators and right, and new opportunities in consulting or media. And how you can do that? The basic thing is free. You can use the social media, right? Your own channels, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. You can post on there. and tag to the people you think they might like to read. Use network. People usually post on the different groups, list drives, press releases, or sometimes people list their latest publication in their email signatures. Contact the authors in your reference list. Also hone your media and brand image, so you post on the media where possible. Or you can also ask the publisher to provide you with a leaflet, because the journal publisher, they usually have the leaflets, and maybe your paper is listed on there, right? Because the next batch, every volume has the list as on that too. So that's all for writing a paper, and I'm happy to take the questions now.
Okay, we have 3 questions, but the first and the question I already answering because it's related to the recording and the material. So for all the colleague and students, you can access the record and the material in the Kesmas UNES YouTube. So you can get the record on that. And the third question from Wahidin, it's how we know about the journal that it's good impact or not, or predatory journal. Would you show us how to identify which is the good or high impact journal and the predatory journal?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. I mentioned that if you're, library, they might have the journals on the library, right? So then you can able to go there or ask your librarian to provide you a link where you can able to narrow down the journals. Because if your library has listed the journals, then you can trust on those lists because they have already sorted out those journals for you, right? And then some libraries, they also rank the journals with a different ranking or based on the impact factor too. So let's say if you are looking for a journal in public health, then you can search paper in the public health, and then you can rank the, based on the impact factor, that what is the high. But sometimes the journal name is not public health. They sometimes just have basically, the generic name, but they might be publishing the public health related papers as well. So you need to look into, I mean, if you are not very experienced, so I will suggest always go to your library online link and search from there, the journal, and then you can rely on that, because sometimes the names are very similar, and it will be difficult for you to find. Or sometimes very well-established journals, you already know them, right? Like you can just search them and see that how many papers they publish and how regular they're publishing. So it will be easy for you to look into and then search for that. Is that helpful?
Yes, I think it's great. Or maybe you can use like Simago website to check the impact factor of the journal. And usually in Indonesia we use quartile to check the rank of the journal, that rather than using impact factor. So in our country,
what's called?
Quartile, like first
Quartile. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a Web of Science as well.
Yeah.
Website. You can also check from the Web of Science.
Oh yes, that's great.
Yeah, because Web of Science is the one who also gives the impact factor to the journals.
Yes.
So if you don't know anything, first thing is go to the library, and then as Dr. Dina mentioned, the Shimago, or you can also look into the Web of Science. So these are the one I suggest. If you don't know anything, try from there. Instead of just randomly searching online, and then you will fall into a trap of some of the journals because they will say, oh, submit to this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I get a lot of emails that please submit to our journal. And sometimes
Yeah.
I feel it's a difficult. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Okay, since our have limitation of time, so before we conclude the meeting, let's take a picture together. And would you open your camera? Okay, so we will take picture together with Professor Usman. Okay, 1, 2, 3, first page. Second page. Third page. Fourth page. Fifth page. And sixth page. Okay. Next. Okay, and I think I need to share my background first. So I think this concludes the meeting. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed the presentation from Professor Usman. And I hope you start to write your idea into the research publication. Okay, thank you all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Usman.
Thank you. Thank you. Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, so before I close this meeting, this is the e-certificate issuance link. So saya gunakan bahasa Bapak Ibu adik-adik mahasiswa bisa menuju ke link yang disediakan untuk mendapatkan e-certificate ya. Jangan lupa menuliskan alamat emailnya dengan tepat ya, karena e-certificate-nya akan dikirim by email ke yang sesuai yang di-entry-kan ke dalam link ini ya. Silakan dicatat dan juga di copy mungkin untuk format masing-masing mata kuliah, mungkin juga bisa mengcopy ini ya agar linknya bisa mudah diakses. Untuk Dek Maulina dan Dek Lukman, terima kasih untuk semuanya. Mungkin saya off cam dulu karena mau sholat dulu ya, sambil Bapak Ibu adik-adik bisa melihat link yang tersedia. Terima kasih, sampai jumpa di kesempatan yang lain. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Bu Dina.